Hi there, it's Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, Women on TV.tv, the Worldwide TV Network, and iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee. So, our usual co-host, she sticks right in there, nonstop Terry Marie. It's unbelievable. She makes me laugh.
Hi, everyone.
And our special guest today, Martin. And I thought your last name was Guigui, right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I got it right.
You know, I've heard so many different versions of it. I've heard Guigui. I have a famous story about Guigui, but we'll save that for another time. And I was born a Guigui, and I forgot. Somebody once said to me when I was a kid or something. They said, "Oh, your last name sounds like the horn of an old Volkswagen, Guigui."
So,
That's funny. Martin, here's the thing. What haven't you done besides probably climb Mount Everest? You've done a lot of stuff, really, when you think about it. I mean, I knew you're probably a drummer. You play basketball too. What don't you do?
Oh man, I jump out of bed to do all the things that I love to do, and I've been doing that since I was a kid, because my parents gave me the nurturing and the freedom to find my voice early on in life. And I'm not very good at cleaning windows. I'll tell you that. I can't do that.
I'm not too good at washing dishes, so I understand.
Either am I.
Amen to that.
Talk about this. So you're in that special category that I would, being that movie whore that I am. So that award-winning filmmaker, that director, that producer, composer. I love people who compose movies because I think they're on a whole different level. I think of Terrence Newton Howard, Hans Zimmerman. I kind of put you in that same realm because I feel you are in there.
Man, thanks for those kind words. They inspire for sure. And you've named a couple of names of people that are very unique and have an original sound to them. You can kind of like, when you go into a movie, you can kind of tell immediately if it's them or not. I grew up in a classical music environment when I was like, as far back as I can remember. I was on 92nd Street on the west side of Manhattan on Broadway and 92nd Street. And my dad was a conductor for the New York Philharmonic, and he used to bring his buddies over, after the concerts, and they used to just jam until 3, 4 in the morning. And I just used to sit on the couch and, drink shakes and just watch them play music. Right. And so I kind of saw that concept of creation and also the communication and camaraderie and inspiration that comes from the chemistry of people who, like, there's nothing better than collaborating with people you love, whether that's in business or whether that's in a creative process. So I saw that really early on, and I didn't know how to appreciate it that early on. My dad shoved the violin under my head and wanted me to play the violin, and he really expected me to become a classical musician. But the point being, to what your comment is, I was in a room, born into a room that demanded excellence, and I was a free spirit. So those two things do not jive. Uh-huh. And I just wanted to be out on the park, playing hoops and playing drums. And, I was into early on, I remember my mom played an Elvis record, and there was a lot of R&B sort of embedded. There was blues embedded into what Elvis was borrowing from, right? And then my mom, as a youngster, my mom would take me to see movies, and I started hearing all those composers that you just described early on in life, and I gravitated towards the piano, and the piano being kind of an orchestra, because it covers a lot, and you can play rhythm with the piano. It's a percussive instrument. You can play melodies with the piano. You can play grooves, you can play jazz, you can play blues, you can play classical, you can play rock and roll, you can play R&B, you can play anything on a piano, right? The piano is one of those multi-genre instruments. So I fell in love with the piano at age 10, And it wasn't until later on, man, when I saw the pictures and videos of myself when I was a kid around those people, that I connected the dots and went like, wait a minute, you know, all of that is accessible. Like anybody who has good mentorship and good role models early in life, you can access all that for the rest of your life, but you have to want to, like you have to be open to it. So I'm a late bloomer. I will tell you that. I have shoved a few lifetimes into one, but I will tell you that, you know, it took me a while to really kind of put it all together. Because when I was 10, 11 years old, I really thought I was going to be in the NBA.
So are you still playing basketball? I mean, well, with the COVID thing, I guess it's harder to get people together, but is that still a hobby or?
I love basketball so much. It's really horrible because at one point or another, I'm going to have to decide, because, you know, you can hurt your hands, and this is like my livelihood, right?
Yeah.
And this is like my true heart and soul. Every time my hands land on the piano or on the guitar or a different instrument, and you can hurt your hands all the time in hoops. But I love the game. I grew up around it. You know, basketball and music was what kind of made me okay in a tough neighborhood, growing up in a neighborhood where, you know, it was tough to be accepted into the gang, into the cliques, you know. And when you could make a basket against somebody that was taller and supposedly better than you, then that got respect, right?
Uh-huh.
When suddenly you would break into a song at, you know, somebody's birthday party because there's a piano in the room and then everybody's singing with you, that also kind of it kind of neutralized the bullying, right? Like I remember I was very short. I was born in Argentina, so I spoke Spanish, and English is my second language. And when I was growing up in New York, it was tough, you know, to have a Hispanic background and want to fit in, right? So anyway, you know, I'm grateful to my dad and my mom who gave me the freedom to find who I am early on in life. And I do the same for my kids. By the way, to answer your question, I play all the time. I love the game. Good. I'm in a couple of different leagues. You know, I'm one of those. It's the only place I can really manifest testosterone. You know, I will say that there was when I turned, I have this tradition. When I turned 30 and I was in this league, I knew I had to score 30 points in that day, and I did. When I turned 40, same thing. When I turned 50, the same thing. And we'll see what happens in the future. That might start going down the other way now.
Martin, you don't look 50.
But I love the game. Oh yeah, I just got the 5-0 and a couple of more. But, you know, I'll tell you something. It's just a number. And, you know, what's really interesting is I have a wonderful friendship with Norman Lear, who just turned 98. And he just hops around and skips around. And you know, I've always asked him, what's that secret to life? And he always has a different answer. You know, he always says, well, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Or he'll say, gosh, you know, I'm just excited about, you know, hearing what's going to happen to my grandkid, or like he just has a zest for life. But it really comes from knowing that you have a purpose. That's really key. If you know you have a purpose and you're never necessarily satisfied, and you know that life, you know, anything is possible in life, then it's here for the taking.
I agree. And then how old are your kids?
Okay, I have a 15-year-old. Her name is Esther. She's an incredible killer singer. She sings the heck out of the blues. I have a 13-year-old daughter. Her name is Rebecca, and she is a great drummer. And the two of them are just writing songs now. They just completed their first EP. I got to brag about it because they're just so good. So I got I got to represent for them that they are a special new kind of, new voice. And I love that. I love the new voices that are starting to prop up now, that speak the truth in their music. And I got a 6-year-old son who is who keeps me in shape every day during the pandemic. We go out and we play hoops, and he's shooting around on a 10-foot hoop and kicking my butt from time to time. And he's a trip. You got to remind me sometime to show you a video of him. He's got a relationship with the NBA, and he does this thing called Game Time Junior, where he talks about the NBA. He talks about it. So it's in the DNA. We can access all that. In the last couple of years, I dove into purpose. I dove into my roots and where I come from, and I learned about the people who had to sacrifice to hopefully give me a better life. My great-grandparents, their great-grandparents, and I found out the journey that brought me to where I am, because both of you have that same DNA. There's hundreds, if not thousands of years of DNA that you can access and have the ability to access if you're open to it. And if, sometimes you'll make a decision in life. You don't know why you took that choice. Well, the more you know about your history, the more it will validate those choices. And so it's been really interesting to see all that in my 6-year-old son, that, he's already, hoops is already a religion for him.
It's already there.
Hey, Martin, talk about a couple of films and things that you've directed, because you're known as that director too, but see, I see more of the music side of you. Talk about that.
I started playing around with movies when I was about 9 years old or so, 10 years old. I had a bicycle that was stolen, and we were living in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and my dad was conducting the symphony there. And one day my bike got stolen, and my parents came up to me about 2 months later, and they said, "Hey, here's a check for $350. And I said, "What's this for?" And they said, "Well, that's the insurance from your bike. It was insured with everything else that we have insured here in the house." And that's when I learned about insurance. I was like, insurance is a good thing. And I went out and got a Super 8 camera and a camcorder and a little editing thing. And I was a newspaper boy. I was, delivering the paper every morning at 5 a.m. So I splurged and spent some of that money and got myself all set up, and then I just started. I became like the nuisance of the neighborhood, and started making short films in that neighborhood with all my buddies. And then I went to film school for a couple of years, and it was boring. Film school. I mean, there are some film schools that are great, and my film school was wonderful too. It was nurturing in many ways, and I learned a lot of history there about cinema. But I had already done all the physical part of it, so I just jumped right into it. And I started making documentaries and independent films. And every time I was I was playing music to survive. I mean, that was my bread and butter. That's how I kept the lights on. And that's how I've always been able to keep the lights on, is music is my heart and soul. But along the way, whenever I'd come up with a story or bump into a story that impassioned me or inspired me or I identified with, and I felt that I had to share that story with the world, I would get into it, write the script, shoot it. And most of the time, it was my credit cards and friends and family and whatnot. And then moved out here moved out to LA about 24 years ago. And I had my first film under my arm. I had developed a project with New Line Cinema, and it was, I got a call from my ex-girlfriend at the time. This was in the 90s. And she wanted me to play at her wedding. And I had never played at a wedding. I always thought that, playing weddings is kind of like writing jingles. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I don't want anybody to see me playing at a wedding. But her mom called me and she was like, "We love you. We want you there. Please come play at the wedding. It's okay." So I went and I got my buddies together, and most of the guys that I put together were, brothers of mine and sisters of mine and dudes that were touring. So there were members of like the B.B. King band and members of like Fish and like members of the band Boston and so on and so forth. And we showed up at this wedding in Long Island, and we really made it, you know, we were clowns, you know, we made a mess out of the whole thing. And, but that became the basis for the story of my first feature film that was called My Ex-Girlfriend's Wedding, originally called Wedding Band. And prior to that, it was a project called The Wedding Singer, which I was the original writer of that story. So I learned what not to do.
Yeah, the Adam Sandler movie.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
And you know, it all happened. It's all true, you know, and I think that true stories carry a lot more emotion and a lot more heart, and people identify with them more. And typically that's why true stories generally perform better for audiences. So that kind of got me, you know, out here to LA. And then I started balancing the producing records and playing music with making movies. And it's been an interesting journey. You know, it's been pretty wild. One of the films that I really enjoyed making was a film called The Bronx Bull, which was a prequel sequel to Raging Bull, and it was a Jake LaMotta story, and that was really a special film that we made. And I can't necessarily point to my finger at any. The one that I'm really excited about is the film that we are embarking on as soon as we get back in 2021. Is a film a story that I bumped into in 1995, which is the true story of the first African-American basketball player to play in the NBA. Like, it would be like the Jackie Robinson of basketball. And it's a story called Sweetwater, which is about Nat Sweetwater Clifton. And it's something that I've been working on for a long time. Not going to bore you with the ups and downs of what a passion project goes through when you're trying to get a movie made, and the trials and tribulations and the challenges that you face when you're trying to get a story made that tell a story that needs to be told, that's been under the radar for so long. And, you know, the message is, it's about change, and the message is that we've come a long way, but we have a long ways to go. And this story carries that message. It couldn't be more timely, couldn't be more relevant. And I know my true purpose on this planet is to be the father that I am, the husband that I am, the son that I am. And but this story is a big part of my true purpose on the planet as a creator, is to get this story to be shared with as many eyeballs and as many hearts as possible. So look for that one, because that's what we're going into production with that. And the NBA is working with us on that as well. And I mean, basketball and movies all in one. I don't know how I'm. You know,
That's exciting.
I'll be able to play hoops every day on the set.
You'll do what Michael Jordan did for. Yeah. And then what did you do Last Dance?
It was so much fun because, you know, I mean, I lived through those years. I was growing up watching those games. So to relive that was really cool. I think most everybody who is an insider in basketball knew a lot of those stories because we had kind of heard about it, but it was nice to see the official story told, you know, by Michael himself, because there were aspects of the emotional relationships between all those individuals that we did not know about, which is not an easy story to tell. You know, I think for Michael, he needed the time to be able to kind of reflect and see it as objectively as possible, right? Truth is a funny thing. Like, even what's going on the planet right now, no matter how much people speculate, we're not really going to know what's going on until a few years from now, when we look back on it and somebody tells the story, or somebody makes the movie, or we really find out what happened and what didn't happen. And that's part of our evolution. You know, that's how we grow. So to answer your question, I think it was one of the best basketball stories that it was not a narrative, that was not a feature. Like Hoosiers was a feature, you know, Coach Carter, Glory Road, those movies were feature films that told a basketball story. among others. This was the best one that was in a documentary or docu-series format. And I think it couldn't have come at a better time because everybody was stuck at home. And when that thing came on, the word of mouth on social media was out of control. The basketball culture jumped on it first, and then the general public jumped on it. And it was good fortune in an ironic way, the producers of that picture that, and for the network, for ESPN Films, that they reached so many eyeballs. But it inspired me. And I think it inspired a lot of younger basketball players that are in the NBA right now, because there's a value system that's really important, not only in sport. And, Michael Jordan was one of the few players who has made it possible for so many young players nowadays to be able to make the paycheck they're making and do what they love to do, right? Which is what our parents always say. Hey, not all parents say this, but do what you love to do and everything else will come, right? I mean, that's the idealistic mantra, but it does work. And that's living proof. Michael is living proof, right? I want to be like Mike was because of that. So I think that it played into that. The pandemic has also been a filter for a lot of people to say, well, man, what have I been doing my whole life? And is this what I still want to do? Wait a minute. I'm starting to realize, this is not me speaking, but people in general might say, wow, I like being at home. I miss being with my kids, or I should do that more often. Or maybe I'm going to make a change. I'm going to move. I'm moving to, Alaska or whatever. So, and I'm not putting down Alaska or saying it's good. Neither. It's just it's an opportunity for a filter change.
Complete change.
Right, exactly. So I think that movie, that miniseries, that piece, The Last Dance, sort of brought everybody to a place of like, wow, man, it's sometimes good to hold on to the past when it has to do with humanity, when it has to do with values, when it has to do with relationships. Because family and friends that are family, that is the most valuable piece of your life, all the way until the day you take that last breath. That's priceless, right? And that's what I got from it, because it talked so much about the family of the Bulls, but it also talked about the family of basketball and the value that has.
What was interesting about a lot of the stuff that you said is, thank goodness, and as being that director, picking up that camera, that Michael and the Bulls said yes to recording that whole season. Imagine if it had never been done. Imagine that, because that's one of the best documentary series ever. And I watch a lot of documentaries do that, going back to 1987 of all the stuff. And then you talked about The Wedding Singer. Well, I was there. I remember doing the junket for that when Adam came in. That was one of Adam Sandler's best interviews. And then look where, Drew is right now. I just remember all of that stuff. One of the best films, that New Line. I was one of the New Line's best fans, who was the journalist. Leave them alone. They're putting out great stuff at that point. And then all of a sudden they had 3 bad films, and then Warner Brothers stepped in. I'm like, you can't just be on a roll for that many years. And I never forgot that. And I say this, and Terry hears it, see me saying it a couple times: leave me alone. Look at the girls, champion what they have to offer as each individual, and we will get stuff done. Because with that, had we not gone to Tennessee to do what we have done, we wouldn't have 6 million views a day and counting. And people ask her, how'd you do this? Well, there's a story behind it. It hasn't been captured yet, but I've been keeping notes on everything that we've been doing and everybody who's come into our organization. So I see you doing the same thing, because I came from that world of drum and bugle corps marching, so I can imagine what your dad was like. I already know what he was like. And you being that free spirit, well, that's what I am too. And all 3 of us are late bloomers. And I always tell people, and I tell Terry this occasionally, sometimes it takes an extra year to get there. You've got to set everything up. You've got to be that oak tree where nothing will blow it down. It's just strong, steady, and consistent. Yep. And that's where we are.
That's
Well,
really inspiring. That's really inspiring.
yeah, Brian, sometimes though, I think you have to get to the point too where you have to do things for yourself and not worry so much about what other people think about you. And I think that that's when I grew into that a little bit later in life. And I think that's a lot of people miss.
I agree with you, Terry, and Brian. You know, both of you. What I love about what you said is that, you know, and one of the mantras that I use on set or when I'm producing a record or just in general, you know, in the journey of life is I enjoy staying out of the way and simply knowing that there's a time to facilitate, there's a time to empower, and there's a time to inspire. And if you can find that rhythm where you're laying back just enough, but you're still on that edge, where you're fearless, but you're grooving, then you can create that timeless, you can be a part of timeless magic, which happens, and you have to be open to it. And you have to be able to see, that's when you can see what others don't see or hear what others don't hear and connect everybody to it. Because that's the ship that moves us forward. That's the frequency that moves us all forward, and for the better good. And in any event, I love what you're saying. I prescribe to that. That's part of who I am in life for sure. We're definitely all riding in the same. We pave our road as we travel it, and that's we're all paving the same road.
Yep.
You know, I admire that.
And I gotta say, sorry to interrupt. I just want to add one more thing to what both of you were saying. There's something to be said about, you know, having the extra wisdom in the late bloomer category that really allows you to appreciate so much more everything that is happening. You see it clearer, you process it with more clarity. There's something relaxed and really like fulfilling about it. Those are the words I can find. It's very fulfilling as opposed to satisfying, right? Because when we're younger, it's all about that gratification. But the late bloomers, I think, have this sense of fulfillment that is rare.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's not, sometimes if you get success too young, you have a sense of entitlement. And when you're older, you see more where you came from and what you left behind there because you had that experience. I mean, that's been my experience.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that, Terry, you met Joya, my Charmin said this. She said it to me, and I never forgot this. This is the month that I created Movie Reviews and More. She said, Brian, if you had gotten your fame and success at an earlier age, you would have been married and had 2.3 kids and been divorced twice. And when she said, I never forgot that because that's the reason why I've never been married, don't have any kids, because I became a late bloomer. So once she did what you just said, because of that, I was able to see things that people don't see. And they don't understand what I'm talking about 2 years prior to what's happening. Because I called this virus 2 years ago. I just didn't know what the name of it was going to be. That's why we're doing so well. In our 26th week, 176 shows, we've reached 1 million views on our YouTube. We're 3.8 out of Tennessee alone. We're 6 million views a day and counting. I haven't even added up today's numbers yet. We're so busy. And
That's so exciting.
That is very exciting.
And Terry's been there.
Man.
And the funny thing about it is, and I talk about this to people when she's not around, is that the one person who's been there the whole time has been Terry. I'm like, how did this happen? And it's like but I'm not joking, because she's smart enough, or maybe she saw something that she stuck around. It's kind of what you were talking about in a way, Martin.
Yeah, but basically I always knew what I wanted to do, and I just didn't have the opportunities until a little bit later. I mean, I got married and then I got divorced, and I don't want to get into that tragedy, but it just wasn't the the best circumstances. And then I just kind of went on another path. So now I do fitness competitions and working with Brian, and I'm a lot happier. So
I love that. And the coming to fruition of a vision, like what has happened to you with this program, is really cool because it validates every choice you ever made. And you're supposed to be right here. This is where you're supposed to be right now. If you're living true to your life, that nothing replaces that. And that's, you know, if we could bottle that and inject that into kids when they're born, just like they, you know, put vaccines into kids when they're born, if we could inject the content that we've been talking about on this, you know, in this program, there would be a lot more kindness on the planet and certainly less war.
Well, you know, too, and I want to add one last thing too. It's like sometimes parents will put their dreams and aspirations in their kids because they didn't achieve it, and then the kid is not happy because they're not really doing what they want to do. And it's, I mean, I know that the parents doing it out of love, but sometimes that holds people back a lot.
There's a in my heart of hearts, the future generations are always the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're here for them in an odd way, right? Because we're here to live our lives. We're also here to take everything to the next level, again, for the better good. And parenting is so important. You know, there aren't enough role models, and certainly,
I agree.
And it's unfortunate, but I will say this: I do feel that we are the stream of consciousness of our species is starting to embrace that more, and it may be because of the confessional aspect of individuals who are brave enough and courageous enough to come out and say, hey, yeah, you know what? I'm dealing with some crap. There's some shit going on right now, and I'm going to tell you about it. And whether that's the Me Too movement, or whether that's, you know, prevention of child abuse, or whether that's going on in underprivileged sectors, whether it's BLM, whether it's in our religious sectors, we're now just starting to say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to. I'm going to tell my story for what you can look at me however you want to look at me. You can judge me if you'd like, but I'm telling the story because other people are going to identify with it. And together we can all evolve in a better. It's like starting to see that happening. It's really cool. You know, the younger generations, when I mean younger generations, I'm saying the teenagers of today and the generations prior that are coming right behind them have a really interesting truth filter that we don't, that we adopted. Like we adapted to, I should say. We adapted to technology. We adapted to social media. We adapted to, try to say that 3 times fast.
Adapted.
we adapted to the internet and its power, right? It's a double-edged sword. But the younger generation, who we haven't put necessarily a label on yet, or a brand, you know, we haven't come up with their baby boomer or millennium name quite yet. That generation is so used to the speed that they can differentiate and they can discern what's not real so much quicker and faster than we can. So I have great faith, whether there's lack of parenting or not, I have great faith in that generation. I can't explain it. And I'm around it a lot because it's in my household.
Yes.
But it's pretty cool how chill they are.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go, Martin, I want you to say hi in your native language to the audience out there, to his friends, family members from Argentina, because an iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, YouTube is not in Argentina, but our shows are in Argentina. That's why our numbers are so big. So go for it.
Too cool. That's awesome. A mi familia, a mis hermanos, a mis hermanas, a todos mis amigos que están en Buenos Aires, en la Argentina, a mis amigos en Puerto Rico, en San Juan, en Nueva York, en Vermont y acá en California, les mando un abrazote enorme, muchísimo amor y saludos cariñosos de Los Ángeles.
Terry, you get the last thing? Talk about your TikTok real quick.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I have had the acting bug in my body since I was like a little kid. So right now, since we haven't been able to red carpet stuff, and we're back in the studio, but I've been discovered TikTok, so I'm doing little skits and that kind of stuff on there. So you can find that on Terry Marie Nonstop. My Instagram is Terry Marie Nonstop, and then all my hosting stuff is on my website, which is terrymarieofficial.com. And I'm competing in the end of November at Fitness Universe in Vegas. So there you go.
That's awesome.
Wow. So with that, I want to end this. So Martin, I want to thank you for coming on. And I can't remember if you were there for the Wedding Singer junket, but I remember, I just remember doing those interviews at the Four Seasons, and that was just a fabulous day.
I was there, and I remember, and it's amazing to be reconnected that way. You know, that's, again, meant to be.
One of my favorite films. So
Right on.
Yeah, I love that film.
And
Awesome.
for Terry Marie
Awesome.
Nonstop, this is Movie Reviews and More. iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, which goes to Argentina, by the way. YouTube doesn't. iTube does. So with that, WomenOnTV.tv and the Worldwide TV Network, if you see someone without a smile, Martin's got a great smile. So Martin, you can give the world one of yours because the world needs it, right?
The world needs a big smile, and you know what? When you smile at the world, it will smile back.
We'll see you next week.